this presentation, you will be able to define the trafficking in persons and also provide examples, whether labor trafficking or whether sex trafficking or whether sale of organ or whether child marriage or whether any other types of recognized trafficking persons. And also you will be able to know whether these terms and terminologies has been incorporated in the current legal system or it have been upgraded into the bill. Then also you will be able to understand why we care about combating human trafficking, and also able to identify who will be the traffickers. Traffickers may be you, maybe your neighbor, maybe the chief, maybe the organization, maybe the company, maybe even some official within the system. Then also you will be able to recognize the gaps that I said identified, because people are talking about whether the trafficking in persons as an offense being criminalized. Yes, it is criminalized, but under different names, not trafficking in person, and under different laws, and the concept of element of the trafficking in person in terms of action, means, and purpose are not fully addressed in most of the provisions that are related to trafficking in person. That's why we advise as a task force to have a comprehensive bill that address the trafficking in persons and also address issues of auxiliary offenses and the other gaps in regard to victim protections and support and assistance and repellent. Then also, participants will be able to illustrate the relevant laws pertaining to the issues of trafficking in persons, various types under South Sudanese laws, as I mentioned before, and present these examples from the point of view whether trafficking in persons happening within the country or within the states or transnational, as explained before. And the final is that the key concept of the model. There was a question about what are the legal framework that governs the trafficking in person in South Sudan. Yes, this is some of the laws. This is some of the laws, because people are talking about whether there is laws govern some of the trafficking in persons forms and types. So you can find some of them under the Penal Code, some of them under the Child Act, some of them under the Labor Act, some of them under the Passport, some of them under Anti-Money Laundering, and some of them under SPLA Act, because of the time. Then also, what is the basis of the South Sudan now criminalize the trafficking in person and drafting the bill and urging that the bill to be passed? Although this is a basis from the Constitution. If you go through the Constitution, Article 13 sub 1 is about the government is the Constitution is saying that slavery and slave trade in all forms are prohibited. And then also no person shall be held in slavery or servitude. And then again, no person shall be required to perform forced and compulsory labor except as a penalty and a penalty under by the competent court. Then also all levels of the government are requested under the Article 16 sub 4b to enact laws to combat harmful custom and tradition, what you are talking about. Then it will be the level of the government that where the harmful custom exists to be challenged. Why you are not enacting laws to combat this lower harmful custom and tradition that undermine the dignity and the status of the woman. Then also, every child under the Constitution has a right under Article 17 sub 1g not to be subjected to negative and harmful culture and practice which affected his or her health, welfare, dignity, and to be protected. So now if this provision violated the provision of the Constitution, then the person who violates, you have a right to appeal his decision to the Court of Appeal or to the what do you call, to the Supreme Court. Also, there is a penalties under the Child Act, for example, for infringing the right of the children. We have a challenge, and I want you to note this challenge. When we talk about the trafficking in person under the Penal Code, Section 282 is limited the trafficking in person when it is occur abroad, not inside the South Sudan. This is one of the the challenge, because if you read the section, it say whoever procure or entice or leads away. This is one of the actions, even with his or her consent, means, and any person, whatever girl or marry, for sale. The idea is sell or immoral purposes, but the immoral purpose was not defined under the law, and be carried outside. This is a problem. Be carried outside South Sudan, commit an offense. What if happened inside South Sudan? So the section is not covering if it is happening inside South Sudan. And the same also is only talking about sell and immoral purposes, and immoral purposes is not defined under the law. So it will be also a room for the people to argue. Then also when you go to Section 22 sub 3 Child Act, talking about every child has a right to be protected from the following type of treatments and abuse. One of them is abduction, and it's happening, children being abducted to other communities, being exploited, and thereafter, people are going for a reconcile and then bringing the child back, but the traffickers are not being brought into the book. They challenge about the implementation. And then the term trafficking appeared here. Again, not trafficking in person, only the term trafficking. For any purpose or formed by any person, including parents and guardians. So the case she's talking about, maybe, I don't have all the pictures, but maybe the parents, one of the parents or guardians is the one behind the exploitation of that child. Also, sexual abuse, exploitation, or conviction be sentenced. Then in case if it has happened, you can be sentenced for not exceeding 14 years. Every child has the right to be protected from early marriage. So you have a right laws in place, and if there is a violation of the law, then you have the right competent courts that you can go and challenge those who are violating the law. Every child also has a right to be protected from exposure to economic exploitation and child labor, Section 25 sub 1 Child Act. There is also a penalty for infringement of the child rights. We can summarize what happened in the Penal Code by saying the Penal Code, if we want to relate the Penal Code to trafficking in person, be different forms, without we can say it. Penal Code defines prostitution as engaging in immoral sexual activities for consideration or for payment or reward, with the various offenses related to it, and also coercing or inducing a person for purpose of engaging in sexual conduct also is criminalized. Can result also in imprisonment for up to 5 years and fine both. Dating also a person for the purpose of engaging in unlawful sexual conduct can also result in imprisonment for 1 year. We have a concern about some of the punishments are not stringent enough based on the circumstances of the crimes. Child Act also, we can summarize, we say Child Act defines the child as a human under 18 years. Again, when you come to the marriage, they say marriageable age, and marriageable age is not defined. So sometimes it can be argued. And a child labor as any work that harms or work that exploit them, or the children. For example, this word can include the physical, mental, moral, educational activities, victims of such offenses may face imprisonment. So if you come across this kind of children being exposed to this kind of work, then you can go to the Child Act and then you select the relevant section. In most of the cases, can go for the punishment to 14 years. The only problem also with the sentencing guidelines, we don't have a sentence guidelines from the Supreme Court, and then it is up to the discretion powers of the judge when it said not exceeding or not less than. So sometimes can be abused because if there is a big gap, for example, sentence not exceeding 14 years. So I can put 1 month or 2 months, 2 years. There is no sentencing guidelines that can limit it between this and this, or this is the intention of legislation. Here, severe sentence can be. And then even if you go through the law, you will not find the aggravated factors for the trafficking in persons, so that whereby the judge will be restricted only to go for the aggravated punishment. Child Act also of South Sudan protect every child, as we mentioned, from economic exploitation and child labor, ensuring fair treatments and protection for all children. It prohibits activities related to mining, as I mentioned before, activities relating to carrying heavy agricultural labor and construction work, industrial undertaking. The problem, those of the Ministry of Labor, Aloha, and Inspection, they are not capacitated enough to go to this area so that they can inspect and find and identify whether this exercise is being practiced and bring those who are violating the child right to book. So there is a lot of different circumstances. Also, the Act is talking about the minimum age for admission. It is the minimum age for admission to paid employment is 14 years, while the minimum age for engaging child in a light work is 12 years. Light work. لكن الوقت الكبير يكون من 14 ل 4. And then also there is some of the, because of the time, you can get the presentation. Also, Free Labor Act. Under the Labor Act of 2017, it defined the forced labor as any work or service performed under threat or penalty or not being offered voluntary. It prohibits the recruitment or the use of the forced labor and set the minimum working age for the children, regardless of whether they are employees. The government is responsible for designing and implementing programs to eliminate this form of child labor and also prevent their engagement. This is a lower international recognized different forms of exploitation. So you may find exploitation in sex or in labor or in debt bondage or in domestic servitude or in forced marriage or child soldier or forced begging or organ removal. So if you are talking about trafficking in person, that means one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 forms. One of these forms is considered trafficking. Then it will be either trafficking, sex trafficking, or labor trafficking, or removal of organ, and all these things. So, to summarize, we can say, beyond sex trafficking, you can find different sections under Penal Code related to sex trafficking, and some of them under Child Act. Then also labor trafficking, you can go to the Labor Act and Child Act, you will find some relevant provision to labor trafficking. If you talk about sale of organ, you go to the Penal Code. If you talk about child trafficking, there is different type of child trafficking. Can be as I say, child marriage, can be a child labor, can be a child begging, can be a child pornography, can be a child soldier. All of them are criminalized under Child Act and even under some lower section within the Penal Code. And and then a problem, the issues with migrant or those who are illegally into South Sudan under the what do you call the Passport and Immigration Act. So offenses related to illegal migrant under passport and migration, there is a problem of the penalties and the fine. The fine and the what do you call the fine and the imprisonment is very lenient to the extent that it is better for him to bypass the laws, so that if he go to the court, then the punishment will be like 500 SSP. 500 SSP will not be a sweet, and the maximum is 2,000. It's still in the book. So we are urging the relevant director in the Ministry of Interior to come across these sections to look for amendment. You see, 500, you can go to the section. So, from here, we are going to talk little. We will not give any explanation. We want to conclude with some of the case studies. Question, who is involved in trafficking? In trafficking case, there is the recruiter, the person who will be recruiting the victim, and then there will be a trafficker, the person who benefiting from this act, and there will be a victim, and then there will be a consumer, and all of them supposed to be addressed in the law, and we have fully addressed these issues in the law. These are some of the pictures that resemble the trafficking of the children, and you can see some of them in South Sudan. Like in here, this is not South Sudanese, this is from other countries. Again, this is happening the same in South Sudan, whether children are being exploited to labor, forced labor, and selling lower benzene fishaware, and then out the nightclub, and if you come across at the night, you may find some of the ladies like this in some of the lodge, roaming around some of the lodge, and even in the mining areas. The other question is how traffickers do human trafficking. It is elaborated that it is 3 ways. They conduct acts, and then there is means they are using, and the purpose is to exploit. And usually the purpose for trafficking in person is to exploit the victim, so the trafficker take advantage of the victim for their own benefit. So for the trafficking in person to be occur, there is a 3 elements. You as a prosecutor or a police investigator, if you want to prove that the case is a trafficking in person, so you have to prove one of the elements of the acts that committed by the trafficker, and the means that used by the trafficker, and the purpose that he exploited the victim. So if you prove the 3, now you prove the case of trafficking in person. This is in brief what constitutes the action, what constitutes means, what constitutes the purpose. Who are the traffickers? So you can see, trafficker can be an organized crime, can be a massage therapist, then they can recruit people, their massage, it will end up exploited for sex, and can be business owners. You can establish a business, but behind you use this business for exploitation. And then also agriculture operation, where you will find a lot of people being exploited in labor, forced labor. And then also you can find mungkin your neighbor can be a trafficker, mungkin your friend, mungkin your family member, mungkin you a village chief. So a trafficker is not only somebody with certain characters. Why the victim always, or victim of the trafficking in person, do not report, and then also sometimes run away, or sometimes say no for human trafficking or traffickers. They are not reporting to the police, and they keep silent in most situations. What is the rationale behind? The rationale in most of the cases, sometimes because the traffickers use different means whereby they can silence the victim. In some situations, they can threaten the victim. The victim will not be able to report because he or she under threat. Sometimes they can forcing a victim to what they want using other means. Sometimes they can abduct the victim, and the victim will not know her or his whereabouts. Then also sometimes they deceive or they use deception the victims. Victim can be mispromised, that is going for a decent job, then it will end up being exploited. Sometimes they can abuse the power. Abuse of the power come from those who in the authority. Those in the authority, in some situation, they can abuse their powers and they dismiss, for example, the case, and on sometimes also they can taint a lower case against the lower the victim, or sometimes they can influence a lower the victim. We have a situation whereby in some instance, you may find somebody who is supposed to protect the right of the victim now is underground compromising with the trafficker to settle the case amicably instead of bringing to book or to the relevant competent authority. Also, sometimes victims do not report because they were given a promise. For example, they will be giving promise that the victim can get a small payment or a benefit to get his or her cooperation. We come across a case whereby some of the victims were trafficked from one of the neighboring country on the promise that they will be coming to play football games in Juba here on behalf of some of the teams. Then they will be given like 500 for each. Unfortunately, they were brought and kept in one of the areas for 1 month. Even they did not play the food, and they were about to be exploited in other low exploitation forms until when they rejected based on their allegation, or the statement with the victim, they were brought to one of the police station on the allegation that they illegally entered the country and they would like stolen some of the stuff in one of the the place where they kept. But they were courageous enough. They shout and they cry in the police station, and they said that they were brought here on a promise that they will be playing football, but unfortunately they were not allowed to be playing the football, and they were kept in a situation where there is no enough food and even protection. So somebody reported the matter, and they were protected, but unfortunately, we discovered later on that they were compromised, and they went back to their country, and even the case was not reported again. So I don't know who is keeping the case now. How to combat human trafficking, because you are here, and then you will be later on train other people. So, and for us to combat the trafficking in person, we have to educate. However, you have to educate yourself so that you will be able to distinguish between the trafficking in person and smuggling of migrants and the other crimes, so that you cannot mix between smuggling, between trafficking, between the other offenses. When you educate yourself, then you can educate the others. Now you are in a position that to be educated so that you will educate others. Then again, you get more involved. Like every time you come across issues with trafficking in person, whether in the internet, you have to educate yourself, download the videos, download the articles, and even read the books, so that you will get a lot of knowledge, and then your attitude will be changed automatically. Then have a conversation always, so that you get information, and then share with others, because power of knowledge was the one get the case, but then I will be giving you the case. Power of knowledge, allow with one of the nurse identified the symptom with a victim of trafficking in person, and then thereafter the organization or the person or the trafficker was got arrested. In the case of Natasha, out of the trafficking.
Short information for all of you. Have you read the agenda till the very end?
Based on the analysis that were carried out under the leadership with the task force, and even with collaboration with some of the national and international experts, we identified some of the gaps within the legal system, And as a result, there was a proposal that we should have a comprehensive anti-trafficking in person act that was presented in terms of the bill to cover and to resolve the identified gaps اللي هو الثغرات القانونية اللي جيناو في النظام القانوني في جنوب السودان. So there is no definition for the human trafficking. Under our laws, there is a term trafficking in person, but the definition, mafi, no definition. Then also, under our current system, there is no also definition of what constitutes exploitation. We are talking about terms exploitation. Again, unfortunate, under the current legal system, the exploitation definition is not introduced. That's why all of these identified gaps were resolved in the bill. Then also, the term transnational organized crime, it is not also defined under the current legal system. That's why the question was raised here. What is meant by transnational organized crime? Also, we take a look at the definition of the Palermo Convention and the other relevant convention and protocol into the bill. Also, there is a problem of also definition of what constitutes organized crime. We have a conspiracy, but conspiracy in some situations cannot form the organized crime. Is it organized crime form of two person or three person, or at least two person or one person? So the definition of organized crime is not there under the current legal system, but also was taken into consideration in the bill. There are also issue of migrant smuggling, also is not defined. It's not defined under the legal system. The issue of acts, means, purpose as an element of the trafficking in person offense is not there. You can go through the legal framework, whether penal code, child act, labor, all this, you will find some of these elements. You can find action and means, you will not find exploitation. Or you find exploitation, you don't find a means. You find means, you don't find the other. So for the offense of trafficking in person, the three supposed to be established so that you can talk about trafficking in person. So which are the three standard elements of the trafficking in person have not been properly captured under the legal system. Also under the legal system, there is a problem of no auxiliaries offenses that trafficking in person have trafficking in person, trafficking in children, and all these things. But there is auxiliary offenses like the organization that are doing or they use the service of the trafficking in person, or those who will be concealing and who are the identity of the trafficked person, or those who will be forging and who are the documents so that they will allow people to be smuggled and who are fraudulent visas and all these things. These are considered auxiliary offenses. Unfortunately, are not well captured, and some of them are not even criminalized under the current legal system. There is also there is no severe penalties, as we mentioned in the issue with smuggle into the country. You will still keep the punishment of few months, and in some situation, the fine of 500 or 2,000, which is less than $1. So, how come you want the judge to go against the law? It is better to recommend that the law did that obsolete law to be amended. Otherwise, don't put a fine as a fix in the law. So, all of our challenge. Also, there is a challenge under the penal code. The penal code lacks explicit provision regarding the liability of the legal persons, and also an international cooperation mechanism. If you go through the penal code or the code of criminal procedure, you will not come across the term extradition. You will not come across the term mutual legal assistance. You will not come across the term central authority. You will not come across the term repatriation, the term rehabilitation. So we need a robust amendment of the penal code and the code of criminal procedure to meet the international standard and also as a part of domestication of the signed or ratified convention. There is inadequate provision regarding the confiscation of the assets, the properties, the proceeds of a crime, and instrumentality. If you go through the penal code, these terminologies you will not find there. Al-Huwa, the proceeds of crime, the instrumentalities, what is meant by instrumentalities, even you will not find Al-Huwa, who will be managing the confiscated asset of the traffickers, who and the money that will be confiscated or the properties that will be confiscated by the court order, where it will be remitted, and whether the victim can be benefited from this money. We have a case whereby we managed to take the case until the level of the Supreme Court. It costed us a loss. We have been investigating for more than 2 years until we get the final conviction and confiscation from the Supreme Court. But the properties, we did not get share from it as the prosecution authority or as the investigation authority or as the people who are behind the prosecution. So in some situation, a whistleblower should be rewarded, or somebody who is prosecuting the case should be rewarded, so that he will also not be fallen into influence of the accused or the culprit. We discover that there are no regulation for the victim and witness protection, and even whistleblower, whether reward, whether compensation, under the Code of Criminal Procedure, that address also even issues with extradition, mutual legal assistance, victim referral mechanism, victim protection, support, assistance, rehabilitation. All are, this is a concept with trafficking in person, and issues with prevention, protection, rehabilitation, and repatriation. So if you go thoroughly through all the legal, the current legal system, you will not find. I can challenge some of you here, you can point to us under which law you may find the term whistleblower. Under which law you can find the provision about victim protection mechanism, provision about witness protection. Like the case raised here, she said she is a victim, needed protection. But the question, who will protect him? Yes, it is the government, but which agency under the government is meant for the protection? Which regulation that identify the procedure for protection, and which kind of protection that will be offered to the victim or to the type of the assistance? I come across one day, she is asking about where the victim can be sheltered or can be put. But unfortunately, the relevant institution said they don't have budget so that they can be accommodating. And she is still now claiming that the victim is still under her expenses. Even the international organization here, the civil society, also they decline. Like they have their own agenda. They will talk in certain area only. But when you come for certain issues which is relevant to their, they will say, no, we don't have budget in this line. We are not mandated. So we still have a problem for protection, for witness protection, for even whistleblower, and this one need laws, thereafter regulation. Whether it will be an amendment of the Code of Criminal Procedure or it will be a certain law that will be addressing these issues. Issues with international cooperation, addressing issues with extradition. Today, if you are asked, for example, somebody want to be extradited from abroad, under which law you will be base your opinion. If you go through the Code of Criminal Procedure, you will not find issues about international cooperation and extradition, mutual legal assistance. Example, somebody committed a crime, escaped, and hid in South Sudan. There was a request from the other country requesting this person to be extradited back to their country, which law it will be followed, whether this person can be taken to court to defend a lower the extradition request, or it will be silently extradited and call it Vienna deported to his own country. Extradition them a process. Also, the extradited person has a right to be brought before the court and to defend a lower the extradition request. So we need also a law that will regulate extradition and will regulate mutual legal assistance and will regulate all the other forms for protection of the victim. There is no specific law that address trafficking in persons in 4 pieces. We say it is scattered as a crime only under different laws. Again, as a concept, prevention, protection, prosecution, rehabilitation, and repatriation must be comprehensive law that address this matter. That's why Task Force advised the government to ratify the relevant convention, the protocol, and to draft the anti-trafficking in person bill to address all these matters. And it's good enough the government accepted the recommendation, and now the law before the Ministry of Justice for drafting and tabling. So we can conclude here. We said there is no specific law address the trafficking in person in 4 pieces, whether prevention, protection, prosecution, rehabilitation, repatriation, while also establishing the relevant competent Al-Hua task force or the authority or the central authority. We as a task force, again, task force with a limited powers, and you may hear tomorrow or another day that this person is being deployed and removed from task force. In other countries, task force, and if you could like a minister, and then have a privilege, emoluments, and a duration, whether 3 years, 5 years, then it can be renewable. Like because we don't have the law, that's why the government recommend Vienna let have a temporary task force to carry out all these things until we have the law in place. By then, you may not find me, you may find somebody, because by then it will be a privilege. You'll be in the status of minister or deputy minister like in Egypt, then you'll be having a lower protection and all these things. So we don't mind. At the end of the day, we want to reach there. Whether today or tomorrow, we will be still struggling. So you know the challenges, and now you want to see whether we are going to the right direction. Yes, we are going to the right direction. We drafted the law to address all the challenges I mentioned, and the features of this anti-trafficking in person bill. This is a summary. This is not the whole, but to get you into picture. The law or the bill, because it is still a bill, the bill aims to address the legal system gap I mentioned, and then also by incorporating Al-Hua concept of prevention, protection, prosecution, rehabilitation of human trafficking victims. The bill also aligns with the United Nations Convention and protocols, the Palermo Convention for Combating Trafficking, combating transnational organized crime. And we say even the term transnational organized crime is not defined under our laws. Otherwise, now we embodied all the definition of the convention, and we on the stage of domesticating and carrying out reform in other laws. The protocol also for combating trafficking in persons, especially women and children. The law also defined the trafficking in person, and we took the definition of the convention and even the protocol. And then now we include in the bill the issues of acts, means, purpose, victim, and victim exploitation. The bill also established anti-trafficking in person. Instead of to be named task force, now it will be named anti-trafficking in person committee. Then it will be appointed by the president if it is passed. And then there will be also secretariat with the specific powers and function. For example, some of these powers will be coordinating and protection and issues with the assistance with the victim, and also developing of the trainings and ensuring a victim's safety. It is also allowed, as I mentioned, because there is a gap there, allowed the extradition request for trafficking in persons, crime under bilateral or multilateral agreement. In the absence of the multilateral agreement or convention, then the country should sign bilateral agreement with the interested country so that issues with mutual legal assistance extradition can be tackled and can be addressed accordingly. The government ratified the relevant convention that provide also provision on the issue with the liability of the legal person. Most of the cases are related to trafficking in person, even smuggling, are being dealt with agencies which are registered as the legal persons. And some of them are organizations, some of them are companies. And companies, organizations, and are considered legal persons. Also, issues with the verification of the victim documents. Victim support and assistance, additionally victim protection, compensation, rehabilitation, repatriation, non-prosecution, all are addressed under the bill. So we are hoping that the bill will be passed so that we will be no talking about the gaps in the system. Here, recruitment, so that you will be able to know and distinguish between trafficking in person and others, take different forms. Sometimes it can be in terms of meeting the need for food or clothing or shelter. Sometimes we take a lower form of promising of romance, love, sometimes offer of independence or luxury, cash, sometimes exploiting position of authority, adultery, lies, manipulation, exploiting vulnerability, deception. So now we are concluding, coming to the last part, is about the case studies. We have like 2 case studies, and then we have examples, and then we conclude. As now you know the trafficking in person, the different forms without, and who are the traffickers and the victims, all these things. So here we'll be like reading to you some of the cases. Again, at the end, we'll be having 2 specific case study. Then will be you to decide which type of trafficking in person, or which consists means, which consists act, and what consists the purpose.